Before the internet was even conceived of, there was ARPA and their child, ARPANET. The ARPANET was envisioned as a means of transferring data in packets from one computer to another for the sake of information sharing in the military and with colleges. This was the spark of a new era of communications, the World Wide Web.
In the beginning, the internet was nothing more than a dream held by one man. That man's name was Tim Berners-Lee. He wanted to create a network that would allow scientists in the high-energy physics community to be able to communicate more freely and easily by means of data held on computers. So, in 1989, Berners-Lee wrote up a proposal that he called Hypertext, or CERN. CERN is an acronym for the Conseil Européen pour la Recherche Nucléaire. The proposal stated three provisions. The information sharing system must be universally accessible to anyone connected to the computer platform. The information sharing system must have consistent user interface and would look and behave in the same fashion no matter how it was accessed, and the information sharing system must allow links between documents, forming a web relationship between text, graphics, sound, and video. The third provision is what excited his constituents the most, as they would have loved to be able to point and click on a reference and be taken right to the information in a moment's notice. In March of 1991, Berners-Lee's dream came true. The newly formed information sharing system was called the World Wide Web and was hosted by a CERN computer. Because the information was served up in a special format specifically for this type of system, the first computer host also became known as the first web server. In 1992, the World Wide Web was made available to the public via the Internet, which was the world's largest computer. At first, users had to rely on a text-based browser. One would simply type in the name of the document one wished to read, and the browser would find it and display the information. In 1993, a student from the University of Illinois created a new type of web browser. It was the world's first GUI browser that utilized a mouse as well. 1 year later, Anderson and Jim Clark created their own commercial version of Mosaic and called it Netscape, and it is from this point that the browser wars had finally begun.
Tonight on History of the Internet, we go behind the scenes to investigate one of the driving technologies behind the Internet, the dial-up modem. We go now to our reporter on the scene. Kira, how are you doing over there?
I'm doing well, Dante. As you know, the dial-up modem was one of the key components behind the birth and subsequent growth of the Internet. Dial-up modems were the only way to connect to the Internet once it actually became available. The term modem comes from the words modulate, demodulate, and its sole purpose was sending and receiving information between two computer systems. They were the first invented in the 1950s from the need to transmit data from the North American Air Defense, and they operated over a public phone line. In 1962, AT&T created the first commercial modem which could transmit data at a rate of 300 bits per second. By 1991, modem speeds had reached 14.4 kilobits per second. Then, in 1994, the speed doubled to 28.8 kilobits per second. By 1996, Dr. Brent Townshend invented the 56K modem, which pushed the limits of what people thought modem speeds were. Then came broadband.
Well, perhaps not that kind of band, but just as important to the development of our society. We go now live to our reporter on the field, Ian. Ian, how are you doing out there?
It feels like the mercury fell at the bottom of the thermometer, Dante, but I'm still hanging in there.
So tell us, what is broadband?
Well, according to the wordnetweb.com, broadband is an adjective and means for or relating to or being communications in which can be divided and shared by multiple simultaneous signals as for voice, data, or video. Broadband was the answer for the previously slow internet, weighing at a whopping 768 kilobytes per second. Broadband was like the salvation for the internet as websites became more complex and the content gradually got larger and larger. Nowadays, broadband runs at as fast as 159.2 gigabytes. Now, I don't know what to be downloading at those speeds, but it's nice to have it when it's there. Back to you, Dante.
Thank you, Ian. When we come back, we'll be investigating the birth of one of the largest social networks in the world, and one of the most popular. We'll also have your weather for the evening, coming up next.
Email. The final frontier. Or not. Almost no one in the world today can go without using email these days. We use them to join forums, news groups, receive letters, apply for jobs, and get special downloads. But where did this monster app come from? Well, to know this, we must go back in time, way back to the days of ARPANET. It all started on a dark and stormy night in 1971. Okay, it was probably just slightly overcast and mostly sunny with patches of fog toward the evening, but you get the idea. The man, the myth, and the legend, Ray Tomlinson, had sent himself the world's first email. And what epic message was it? What immortal phrase did he send across the wires of ARPANET system? As best he can remember, it was QWERTY-OP, or something like that. Ironically, even though he was the father of email, most people only remember him for being the guy who chose the @ symbol for a host locator, and that's when people even remember his name. But before he could even send the first email, he had to invent a program that could actually send it. So he set to work and started constructing something called SND-MSG. I wonder if that has the same effects on computers as MSG has on people. Anyways, SND-MSG was an alright program, but it had a hitch. It could only send messages to a folder on one computer, the computer it was already in. It wasn't able to communicate with computers on a network. But, as luck would have it, Tomlinson was also playing around with a prototype FTP program called SiteNet. However, SiteNet only had the ability to send messages. It did not have the ability to edit them. Tomlinson got around this problem by simply reprogramming it to include his SND-MSG program. He then chose to use the @ symbol as a means of distinguishing between addresses in the local machines and machines that were someplace else on the network. And the rest, as they say, is history.
At the river mouth, the bears catch only the tastiest, most tender salmon. Which is exactly what we at John West want.
Ooh, that had to hurt. Should have used HTML, the only scripting language developed by Tim Berners-Lee for the sake of posting information on the internet. Now, if Mr. Bear tried using HTML to sell John West his fish, he wouldn't have to worry about having his fish beaten up by John West.